ESPN.com NFL Insider KC Joyner joins us now, as he always does each every Monday and Friday on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Casey, happy New Year's Eve. How you doing, my friend?
Doing great. I appreciate it. Happy New Year to you, too.
So, a lot of people are looking at the Eagles. They get in the playoffs the last day of the season. They win. The Vikings lose. They got in. This is a team that seemed to get hot at the right time of year. I know a lot of times people talk about, you want to be, it's better to be hot in December than in October and September. Do you feel like this Eagles team is in a good position entering the postseason?
I love the position that they're in. A lot of coaches and general managers and such, they'll tell you that you should grade a team not based on one individual game, but how they do in sets of games, like four set of games. So 4 games. If you take the Eagles over the past 4 weeks and say, okay, how have they done over the past 4 weeks? Okay, they can throw vertically, something they couldn't do earlier in the year. The vertical numbers have been great. They can throw short passes really well. 25 straight completions says you can do that. You had 2 players yesterday who had over 50 yards rushing, so you're getting over 100 yards on the ground. You do that. We know they can stop the run well. There's just a lot of things that they're doing well. And you say, okay, well, they got a variety of teams they're going to have to play who have a variety of strengths. Can they handle those strengths besides their pass coverage, which even that has been improved of late? Besides that, I'm looking at them going, the Eagles can go toe-to-toe with just about anybody.
Nick Foles, I've asked this question to a couple people already today, and I would love your perspective on this. So Nick Foles has thrown an interception in 3 straight games. I know a lot of people, they say, well, quarterbacks throw interceptions, it's not that big a deal. But I ask you, Casey, for a team like the Eagles going against a very good defense like the Bears, is there any concern of turnovers when it comes to Nick Foles in the offense?
I've had a metric called bad decision rate since I've been tracking it since the 2004 season. Bad decision rate measures how often a quarterback makes a mental error that leads to a turnover opportunity for the opposing team. In that time frame, there's only been it's only happened on 3 occasions where a quarterback has had a 0% bad decision rate and thrown enough passes to rate as a qualifier. Alex Smith did it twice. Foles did it once. So to be able to do that says that when he's on his game, he can protect the ball as well as anybody over the last 15 years at least. So I don't worry about that, and from about that being an issue. You can still get tip passes, you can still get drop passes. There are going to be times where you might make a coverage read that's an error, but at most he's probably going to make 1 bad decision a game. You can live with that even in the playoffs because Trubisky's going to make a bad decision or 2. He takes chances as well.
Everyone talks about the Bears defense, but what about the Eagles defense? They've played a lot better the last few weeks. They shut out the Redskins. I know the Redskins are basically on their 3rd and 4th string quarterback in offense, and they have 24 guys on IR, but what they've done against the Rams, what they did against the Texans, it feels like the defense is kind of coming into shape right now.
The thing the defense will be able to do for almost the entire season is they've had a good number. What I have a metric I have called good blocking rate. It's how often you allow the defense or the offense to give its ball carriers quality run blocking. The Eagles always do well in that metric, at least the past few years. They've done very, very well over the season. They've done well of late, and they've also kept in check good blocking yards per attempt on defense. Not so many yards per carry you're giving when the other team gives up good block or when they get good blocking. The Eagles have been bad in that metric over the season and sometimes, but they've been better in that of late. And if you can do that, that means you can stop the running game because you're going to either win your point of attack blocks, or if the other team gets good point of attack blocks, you're still going to be able to stop their ball carriers. So I like their ability to excel in both those areas. And their pass rush has been very solid, too, a lot better of late. It wasn't quite as good against the Rams as people said that it was, but it was enough to allow them to sit back and play those shell coverages that were able to shut down the Rams offense.
And we know Casey will get in the deeper dive into the Eagles versus Bears coming up this Friday with Mike Gill, as they do each and every football Friday right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Casey, some bigger picture questions for you as the season has come to an end. I first want to start with a very macro picture question, and that is ESPN Stats and Info came out with this information. According to them, the top 6 quarterbacks in average salary, so that would be Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo, Matthew Stafford, and Derek Carr. All 6 are not in the postseason. So are we at a point where that's just a coincidence, or is there maybe something more to the fact that the overpaid quarterbacks are not in the playoffs?
Ernie Accorsi, the famous general manager he's one of the greatest general managers in NFL history, should be in the Hall of Fame. He had a saying that you could never pay too much for a true franchise quarterback. So if you've got a franchise quarterback, if you trade all your draft picks for a true franchise quarterback, it's worth it. If you pay them big money in the contract, it's worth it. Get a guy like an Aaron Rodgers, he's worth that kind of money. Get a guy like Brady, get people like that, they're worth the money. Most of the guys on that list are not worth franchise caliber money. In fact, I was having a conversation with somebody on Twitter a couple weeks ago where this person is making the case to say, hey, what teams ought to do is if you don't have you should constantly rotate. You should constantly change your quarterbacks and go get rookie quarterbacks and build rookie quarterbacks. Because if you can get a good rookie quarterback, you can keep your cap hit low and build the rest of the team. My argument was if you get a true franchise quarterback, you can't do that because you have to keep the true franchise quarterback. But that shows you there, those 6 quarterbacks. I mean, Rodgers, you could argue, is a franchise quarterback. Maybe one of the others, maybe Ryan, maybe you could argue that. I think you could argue that he's on the precipice of that. But it also shows, I think teams need to say, hey, if we don't have a great quarterback like the Dolphins and Tannehill, why do they pay Tannehill the big money? Because they figured we don't have anything better behind us. Well, you better be thinking about getting something better behind you because there's enough quarterbacks out there where if you've got an average quarterback, you need to be thinking about getting better.
And you look at those quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, head coach fired. They're probably going to have a whole new staff there next year. Matt Ryan, they fired the offensive coordinator. You look over with the Vikings, they fired their offensive coordinator. So on one hand, you're overpaying for these franchise quarterbacks. On the other hand, maybe there's something to be said for the fact that it's not just the quarterback, it's the coaching and the players around them as well.
Yeah, and I wonder if the Vikings look back now and go, wow, we had Case Keenum, and Keenum throws, he's had some of the highest bad decision rates in the league over his career, so he does tend to take a lot of chances. And yet, because he took those chances, the offensive coordinator said, geez, we're not going to throw the ball that much. We don't have to be this great vertical team. We're going to be careful how far we throw the ball downfield. And then suddenly they change quarterbacks, and now, oh, great, we got Thielen, we got Diggs, we got Cousins. We can throw vertical a ton. And the head coach is finally like, no, that's not the kind of offense I want to run. You got to wonder if they look back, if they might go, we got a smart to do with Keenum. Maybe if we just kept Keenum, a good, solid quarterback for what we need. We're a defensive running team kind of system. That's what we do here. I think if they figure if we would have kept him and tried to build more of a team around him, maybe we could have gotten even further because now they got to be looking back at that situation, paying $80-some million for Cousins. I think $70 million was guaranteed. It was some ridiculously high number, but I got to figure they look at that and go, this wasn't worth it because I don't think that situation's going to improve to where he's going to pay off what that contract paid him.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins, $84 million guaranteed is a large chunk of change to guarantee. KC Joyner joining us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at KC Joyner TFS. KC, let's look at the playoff teams that made it. Of the 4 NFC home game teams, the Cowboys, the Rams, the Bears, and the Saints, I think most people believe the Saints are the clear-cut favorite right now. But of the other 3, what of the other 3 do you think has the best chance at beating New Orleans in New Orleans?
Oh, the Bears do, because the Bears know who they are, and they've got. I like the Cowboys a lot as well, but I think the Bears because they know who they are. They know we're a power running team, and Howard's been playing better of late. They got Cohen, so they've got a thunder and lightning backfield. They've got better receivers than they get credit for. Trubisky can run and he can pass. He can make enough big plays in the passing game to where he could give you something downfield. They've got that fantastic defense. I think because they're best suited for their formula. Even the Cowboys are kind of close to them, but the Cowboys probably don't have quite as much firepower on offense, and I still think the Cowboys want to be a little different than what they are. The Bears know who exactly who they are. They know what kind of system they want to run, and so they can play a kind of formula game. If you start playing the Bears formula game, they're any team in the league that can beat them at their formula game. If you want to play that, you've got to get them to play a different style of the game. So as long as they can play the type of game they want to play, they're the most dangerous team besides the Saints.
Of the 2 NFC wildcard teams, the Eagles and the Seahawks, both teams have quarterbacks who have won Super Bowls. Both teams have previously won their division. This time they're in because of the wild card. Which do you think has a better chance of making a deep run, the Eagles or the Seahawks?
The Eagles, because they can play different types of games. Talked about the type of playing a formula game. Seahawks are entirely a formula game, and I got to give them credit. They came into the season having probably the worst offensive line in the league, and they switched to a type of system. They went to a more man blocking system, and they stuck with their running game because early on their running blocking was still terrible. They were just determined, we're going to get this running game going. We're going to stick with it. We're going to be stubborn with it. Now it's paying off. The run blocking's slightly above average, maybe B graded if you get graded on an 8F scale. So they're doing better there, but they're sticking with it, and they know what type of team they are. But again, if you try and get them to be a passing team, it's tough. Baldwin's done better of late. They've got David Moore, but he's done nothing of late. Got Lockett's a very consistent player, but he's not a big play player. If you needed them to go vertical, it's tough for them to do so. Plus, they don't want to do so. So if you get them out of their game plan, it really bothers them. Whereas the Eagles, I think they could go into a number of games and say, we want to go vertical, we've got the people to do that. We want to run the ball, we've got the people to do that. We want to play run defense, we've got the people to do that. There's a number of ways that they can approach their game plans in a way that I don't think Seattle can. So it makes Philadelphia more dangerous.
Okay, so let's flip it to the AFC. So you got the division winners, the Patriots, the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Texans. The Chiefs are going to be the number 1 seed, but historically, the Chiefs, it's not just they haven't won a home game in the playoffs since Joe Montana was wearing red. There's the fact that this is historically a team that has struggled at home in the postseason for the last 4 decades. So can Pat Mahomes be the difference maker, or is Andy Reid and the Chiefs past going to keep up going for them?
I still look at them and go, I know he's doing 50 touchdown passes. They say, okay, they got Kelsey, they've got Hill, and they got nobody else as far as in the passing game. They Conley and Demarcus Robinson. I know he scored a touchdown yesterday, but look, these are not elite players. You can do certain things to slow down tight ends too. I just look at them and go, I wonder if they're hoping that they can get big plays out of Mahomes, and they can. Obviously, 50 touchdowns. But I look at that and go, that's a team that I think could stumble. But their defense has played a lot better of late, because that's their problem, though, is that they get in a lot of shootouts, even with the defense playing better. And shootouts, if you look through NFL history, even the best offenses in NFL history, it's barely over a 500 proposition. It's like 62% of the best offenses in NFL history win shootout games. And if you take a couple of teams out of that equation, it is a 50-50 proposition. So Kansas City cannot afford to get into games where I define a shootout as where both teams are scoring more than 24 points. They cannot get into that kind of situation. If they do, the odds that they win they win the divisional playoff, conference championship, and Super Bowl are very slim.
Casey, I was watching a lot of the Ravens-Browns game along with the Eagles game yesterday, and I thought Tony Romo, I think he said in the fourth quarter, he made this excellent point. I'd love to hear your response to this. Tony Romo said on the broadcast that what makes the Ravens offense unique is that for guys who have never seen that kind of run-heavy offense, unless, as Tony Romo said, you played somebody like Navy in college, it doesn't matter how much planning you do, defenders typically cue on the wrong thing when it comes to that running game. So that's why Lamar Jackson, that running game, have so much success. If you never faced them before, that can make them so dangerous. So do you think the Ravens have the kind of running game offense that can really offset the other playoff teams?
Bill Walsh said back in the 80s, he was talking about during the strike season. He said, one thing we might think of doing is trying to run the old wing T. He said nobody would know how to defend it because it's assignment football. And unless you're practicing assignment football, in order to properly practice assignment football, your defense has to see it. Your defense has to see it. Your offense has to run it. Your scout team has to run it. And if you've been running all these other systems outside of wing T, that kind of football, if you're not running that sort of system, you can't run it the same way you want to. And the defense can't practice against that. Florida State for years used to have problems when they play Georgia Tech in the ACC. The Georgia Tech would still give people problems. But anytime you had to play them, you just didn't know how to play that type of assignment football. So give Baltimore credit that that's the case. The thing is, though, they've got a number of weeks now where they've shown that on tape. They've got a number of things that they've shown, so you can get some keys on them and say, okay, here's what we can do. And if they were to see a team that has a good blocking rate on defense, a team that can really stuff the run very well, you start winning some point of attack blocks up there, and you start putting them in 2nd and 12 situations. Maybe they run them on 2nd and 12, but you can maybe force them to go back and pass. If they go back to pass, I just don't think that Robert Jackson, they've practiced that system enough to make him a good pro quarterback. I think he could be a good pro passer, but I don't think he's in that kind of situation right now.
We didn't have just one, but 2 teams that started with a losing record this year, the Texans and the Colts, and they both made the playoffs. And you look at this Colts team, Casey, Andrew Luck, what Reich is doing with that offense, Darius Leonard and that defense, this seems like a really dangerous team. Are teams in the AFC sweating a little bit more today, knowing that Andrew Luck and the Colts are in the playoffs?
Oh, yeah, definitely, because their front seven has graded out exceptionally well over the past 7 weeks. Their run blocking was great early this year. It trailed off toward the end of the season. Their pass blocking has been fantastic. They can pass block well. Their front seven is great against the run and the pass. and the run blocking can be better. I think, in fact, it never got bad. It just got to be like just slightly above league average. I think they're ranked 13th on the last run blocking metrics it did for prior to week 17. So they're very good in all of those areas. If you can win the line of scrimmage, and you've got Andrew Luck, who, again, look at the receiving corps he's had, but he's making them all look really good. They all put up good numbers at a time because it's Andrew Luck. So if I'm an AFC team, I'm very scared of them, because it used to be that Luck would make up for deficiencies elsewhere. Now they've got the kind of a team around him that he doesn't have to do that, and they get the most out of him.
KC, one more for you. I appreciate your time here on New Year's Eve here on 97.3 ESPN. Again, KC and Mike Gill will go more deeper into the NFL playoff matchups this Friday at 5 o'clock on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Casey, of the teams that were expected to make the playoffs that didn't, I'm saying like the Vikings, the Packers, in the AFC, you're talking about teams like the Steelers, the Jaguars. What's the one or two teams that you're looking at and you're just shaking your head like, what on earth happened?
Oh, don't even get me started on the Steelers, man. My kid is a big Steelers fan, and it's frustrating from an analyst perspective. Nothing is more frustrating to see a team that has a certain amount of talent and doesn't play their talent level. That's not just me saying that. One of the Steelers linebackers actually said that yesterday. He said to the press, he said, "I'm tired of us not playing to our talent level against certain teams." In fact, I think it showed I don't remember the exact stat, but I believe it was 17-12 is what Tomlin teams are since in the last 6 years, I want to say it is, against teams that are 500 or below. When you're playing an average or worse team, they're 17-12. This is a team that has a fantastic record against everybody else, but they always play down to the other team's competition level. I think Tomlin just thinks I can get by on talent against those teams. Like, no, really, you can't. You got to coach it up just as much against them as you do elsewhere. And I think he thinks he can get by on enthusiasm and fire. Bill Walsh said you can do that 3 or 4 times a year, but the other 12 games out of the year, 12, 13 games, you have to play at a certain standard. He talks about the standard. Tomlin does all the time. The standard is the standard. When it comes to playing bad teams, they don't do that. And in the times they've not made the playoffs, in like 4 of the past 8 years they made the playoffs, every time that they've not made the playoffs, they've had a loss to the Raiders in that year, and the Raiders have not been a good team. So it's like, look, buddy, take the Raiders seriously, and if you do that, maybe you get somewhere. Otherwise, you've got a Super Bowl caliber team that's sitting home.
Really quick, just to follow up on that point, you look at this happened to Andy Reid in Philadelphia when he started losing his best coordinators. The team started going downhill. I kind of wonder, you lose Bruce Arians, you lose Todd Haley, you lose Dick LeBeau on the defensive side, and it seems like they haven't replaced those guys with at least on the same level of quality coordinator. Could part of that be the problem as well?
On offense, I don't think it was a problem, but they got away from being who they are, which is a power-running team. I think Ben Roethlisberger wants to be a pass-first team, and they should have told him, no, you can't do that. And if you don't want to come back, fine, you don't come back. We'll go to Mason Rudolph, and we'll figure it out, because you can't have a pass-heavy team. That's who they became. And on defense, I think Butler wants to run some kind of a system. They've got a different type of system. He's trying to coach a system that fit, because Butler couldn't figure out how to, with Keenan Allen. He had, remember that last play that clinched the game for the Chargers on a Sunday night game. He's got a linebacker playing like 8 yards off him in the inside shade, and Allen's just going to run a quick 5-yard out to get a first down on, I think it was a 4th down and short play. It was only need a couple of yards, and he has a situation where it's like, you're never going to stop that guy. It's like, you can't be out-coached to that level and expect to win games, and that's what keeps happening with them. They just keep getting out-coached in games, and it has to do with it, I think, again, from Tomlin. It starts at the top, though. The coordinators are part of the problem. It starts at the top. Tomlin actually thinks we can just out-talent people. It's like, you've got a talented team. You're not that talented. You can't do that against good teams. You can't do it against bad teams. You cannot, just walk through the games and not have some type of game plan and not take them seriously. You got to set the standard higher, and he hasn't. If he doesn't set the standard higher, Pittsburgh should look elsewhere.
Yeah, if it was all about talent, the 2007 Patriots would have won the Super Bowl. But I'm just saying.
yeah, exactly. They've had a Super Bowl caliber team for 3 years and have done this.
Right. Casey, I appreciate your time here on New Year's Eve. Give Casey a follow on Twitter at KC Joyner TFS. And as all guests, you join us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Happy New Year, Casey.
Thank you. I appreciate it.